Recently, I went to a local comic book show and came home with this stack of single issues. Today, I'll tell you about the show, and then I'll show you what I got. Check it out. Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name's Chris, and this is Northgarden Comics. The books I'm going to show you today come from a local show here in the Twin Cities. It's called Microcon. Now, just a little bit of background about Microcon. It evolved out of two shows that used to happen every year here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. They were called FallCon and SpringCon, and they were probably the largest local shows that happened in the area. And then COVID happened, disrupted that normal pattern, and then after COVID, they evolved into something smaller, but a lot of the same vendors, creators, and things would attend. But because it was smaller, I think that's why they called it Microcon. This particular show was called Microcon 3, which is kind of hard to believe. I can't believe they've only had 3 of those, but maybe that's true. And it happened to be the last Microcon that was going on. That was a Sherman puppy earthquake for that causing that little phone jiggle there. It's the last Microcon. And normally when I go to these shows, I try to go like in the middle part of the day or later, just because I like to wait till the crowds thin out. I know that I might not get the best books, but I'd rather have that. I'm willing to make that trade-off and have more elbow room and not compete as much for the boxes. Well, on this particular day, I don't even remember why, but I did go towards the early part of the day. Probably had something going on later in the day and couldn't go. And boy, I could tell the difference. I got in there and it was just wall-to-wall people, which is great for the vendors, but for someone who's trying to go through the dollar bins and things, it makes it really challenging. And so you wind up almost standing in line, or at least standing behind people waiting for something to free up, and then you could get in there. So I did a lot of wandering around first to kind of scope out the scene. I do that anyway, but I did that more than usual because I was waiting for an opening so I could get in. Didn't want to just stand around forever waiting to get into one box. But eventually I did dive in and I found a great selection of books that I'm going to show you today. Now I will go in the order of the vendors, maybe not in order, but I'll keep the books grouped together by vendor. And if I know the name of the seller and if they have an online presence of any kind, I will put links to that information down below in case you're in the area and you want to check them out. But for now, let's go ahead and get to the books from Microcon 3. All right, we're going to get things started with some 50-cent books. These came from a table hosted by a local store, and that's called Comic Book College. I've mentioned them in many previous videos, and they had a variety of priced boxes. These, like I said, were 50 cents. In a little bit, we're going to come back and I'll show you some other books that they had that were $2 books, but at just about every level of pricing, they have deals if you buy in bulk. I think one of those exceptions is the 50-cent book. So I got a handful of these, and they were all just flat out 50 cents a piece. The first few come from this title, Classic X-Men, that I'm working on. The reason I'm working on this is the way I am choosing to collect all of the issues, beginning with Giant Size X-Men #1 up through the Dark Phoenix saga. There's a couple issues in there that they did not reprint in this title, but everything else is reprinted in here, and there's some little additional material in the back of each one of these, which is canonical. It does count. So that's kind of nice too, that you get that little fuller background story in these reprints. And not the least reason, they're a heck of a lot cheaper than the first prints of the original. So I am utilizing Classic X-Men for that reason, which means I'm trying to collect up to, I think, issue 41. And so I found a few issues today, and these earlier issues at least have covers by Art Adams, which is another nice bonus. But I found issue 8 or 9 here. I can't see it from behind. I think that's issue 8. And then I got issue 10. And then jumping ahead, 28 and 31. And I'm going to flip this around. Each of these, you can see the back because there's no backing board on these. They all have artwork on the back cover as well, which is a pretty nice bonus. But 50 cents a piece for those. The next few I got because I had already started this series. I think I found the first like 4 issues in a quarter sale months back, and I found the rest of the short run for 50 cents a piece, so I figured why not. This is the Mighty Captain Marvel, and starting with issue 5 here. I got these primarily because I like the character of Captain Marvel, and so I'm slowly working on at least a modern collection of Captain Marvel. I don't really have any of the first volume of Miss Marvel, but found the rest of this series today. There's issue 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I think in a not too far back video I found issue 0. So it was really only 10 issues to complete this whole series, and now I've got the whole thing. So happy to have found those. And then a few more 50 centers, just kind of grabbing what I could find of the runs that I'm working on currently. And so these next 2, these are Captain America. I want to say this is volume 3, because volume 1 was, of course, the one that started back in the 60s with the issue 100. Volume 2 was the one that was outsourced to, I don't remember if it was Jim Lee, it may have been Rob Liefeld, I think, that did the Captain America when the folks from Image were working on several of the Marvel titles back in like 96. And then when they came back to Marvel, I believe then that would be volume 3, and that's this volume. The interesting thing is that the end of volume 1 was written by Mark Waid with pencils by Ron Garney. Then it went outsourced, and then when it came back to Marvel, that next volume started off again with Mark Waid and Ron Garney. And at this point with issue 16, it's still Mark Waid, but I want to say it's Andy Kubert that's doing the pencils on this. And so all of that to say, I'm working on the Mark Waid portion of Captain America, not just the Ron Garney piece, but getting the Kubert piece as well. He's got some great covers in here, but there's issue 16 and then issue 20. And then a random Fantastic Four issue from volume 3 that I'm working on. There's issue 12. And then one more, again, seemingly random issue of Fantastic Four. Fast forwarding to the Wade Waringo run of Fantastic Four, also part of the Disassembled storyline. This is Fantastic Four number 518. And again, seems weird, right? These kind of just single issues that jump all over the place, but they're 50-cent bins and they're in good condition. So I go through and just kind of grab whatever it is that I'm looking for from those particular runs. It's kind of whatever I find is what I pick from. So that was the first visit to Comic Book College in their 50-cent boxes. All right, the next seller I'm going to show you is Viking Comics. I think it's Viking Comics. Sometimes I say Comic Vikings. I get it flipped all the time. But the owner there is Matthew, and I've purchased from him on numerous occasions at different shows and even at garage sales he's done at his house. And he had a variety of boxes with different prices. This set of books that I got all came out of his dollar bins. This first run I was really excited to find, because you've heard me say in previous videos that I'm working on some of the early cross-gen comics titles. There were 4 initial titles that came out from that publisher in like 2000, and one of those titles is called Scion, and I got the first, I want to say 6 issues of that run, all in really nice shape, and they were as you see them now, no bag, no board. But there's issue 1, and the reason I got these, well, it's because of that title, but it also happens to be a title written by Ron Mars and with a lot of the pencils done by Jim Chung. And I really like his art, so really looking forward to collecting this, and really happy that I could find these first 6 issues all in really nice shape and for just $1 a piece. So I don't know what Jim Chung's first art was, but this has got to be, you know, relatively early. I know he did some stuff back in the 90s with Generation X, but I don't know what his first what his first interior art or his first covers were, but hey, if you know, let us know down in the comments. That'd be interesting to find out. But first 6 issues of Scion, and I found this is now my second of this book I'm about to show you. Back, was it the 90s, maybe it was early 2000s, Marvel did these things called battle books, which were kind of like a battle card game, but with comics. And so you and your opponent would each have a battle book, and then you would trade, because say if I'm fighting as Wolverine, I give my opponent or you the Wolverine comic, because then as you flip through it, you will read the responses as if you're fighting Wolverine, and I'll be looking at your comic, and basically you choose a move, you see how it goes, and then the other comic will tell you what damage was done, and the goal I think is just to get their health level down to 0. But there's like, I want to say at least a dozen of these. There might be like 20 for different characters. And I have the Thor one that I found a while back, and that was the first time I'd ever even heard of these things or seen these things. And now I have this second one that's Wolverine, and just fun thing to be hunting for. Do any of you have these or collected these when they came out? If so, you know, again, share that down below. Continuing on, again, these are all still dollar books. The next several, though, show a $2 price tag, but that's okay. He said, nope, it's all just $1 a piece. Another cross-gen comics title, this time Sigil. And I started here with issue 2 because I already have a copy of issue 1, but I got issues 2, 3, sorry for kind of the glare there from the lights, 4, and 5. I think this is more of like a military space genre, whereas that Scion is clearly a fantasy genre book. And this Sigil title is about to get the omnibus treatment from Marvel, because somewhere back there in the early 2000s, Marvel acquired CrossGen, and then they rebooted several of the titles, and I think they even changed the storylines and things like that, but they're republishing this original Sigil series as all in one volume in an omnibus, so that's pretty cool too. And that's actually what triggered my curiosity about these titles to begin with, and made me say, hey, maybe I could find these issues in dollar bins instead of buying the omnibus. Just a fun thing to be hunting for. We're actually going to keep with the cross-gen theme here, but moving on to another seller. This seller I don't know the name of, just didn't see a name or a sign or anything, so I may or may not have purchased from this person in the past. Found some dollar books, and it looks like I got about 6 books from this particular seller. One of them was CrossGen Chronicles #1. This may have been a limited series that kind of tied together characters from the different original titles. I know it only ran for 8 issues, but I tried to look inside to see, and it definitely came to the early part of the CrossGen universe. So this may have been, like I said, just kind of a crossover tie-in between the 4 otherwise standalone titles. But grab that. Next one here, this goes back to the 90s. This is Green Goblin #12. I'm not collecting this title, but I am trying to build out all of the tie-in issues that were part of the Onslaught event, and this is one of those issues. And then these next, well, I'll show you this one, and then I'll show you the 3 that I'm most excited about. This one is a book 3 from a 4-part limited series called X-Men: The Search for Cyclops. I don't know what's going on in this story, but at an earlier sale, less than a year ago, I found 3 of the 4 issues. Again, that was the first time I'd ever seen them, never heard of this limited series before, but I love Cyclops, I love the X-Men, so of course I was going to get those, and then I still needed issue 3. So very happy to have come across issue 3, because now I can read the whole limited series. And then lastly from this seller, I got 3 books from one title. It's one that I have been hunting for quite a while now, and I still got some more hunting to do, but I'm about 2/3 of the way through the series now. That is Chris I always say his name wrong. Bachalo, I've heard it said multiple ways, but Chris Bachalo, Steampunk. Here's issue 9, issue 10, and then issue 12, which is the final issue in the series. So 12 issue series, and then I think there was a one-shot called like Steampunk Catechism, and I now have about 8 of those issues. I rarely see these anywhere, dollar or otherwise, so anytime I come across them, I'm excited. He did have a couple other issues in the volume, but I had those already, so I left it behind for somebody else to grab, but really excited to have found 3 issues all at once to make progress on that series. All right, one more stack of books to show you, final seller, and this comes back to Comic Book College. I mentioned that they had boxes with different priced books in them. This time around, I dove into the $2 boxes, and that's usually the high end of what I want to spend at shows. So if you're newer to the channel, it gives you an idea of how I like to buy a lot of my back issues. I'm really a dollar or less kind of sweet spot for collecting back issues, just because it's fun to find books for that cheap and to see what I can find for that cheap, and it's just exciting to hunt for it. So I don't often buy, pay up for books. Sometimes I will though, but that's, different story, different time. This though, I went into these boxes, even though they were $2 a piece, because if you found 10 or more, they dropped the price to $1 a piece. So that's great. So I figured I would start looking, and if I could get close to that 10 issue mark, then I would just go for it and get at least 10, because I didn't want to, the worst thing you could do is come up with like 9 books, so then you're going to spend $18, whereas if you found one more, it would have dropped to $1 a piece. So I dove in, and the first thing I found was an issue I have definitely been wanting for a while, and it motivated me to really be looking, and that is Mighty Thor number 25. Similar to that Captain America run I showed you earlier, this comes from the volume 3 of Thor. Wait, does it? Because Thor was not part of the Image reboot. This might just be Thor volume 2, but this kicked off with John Romita Jr. doing the pencils, and I think he did pencils for this might be the final issue in his run. And I have most of the issues. I'm missing just a couple, and now with this find, I'm missing one less. And this is a cool one too, because this is that foil and reflective cover. But when I found that, I was excited to just have found that book, but definitely wanted to press on and see what else I could find, see if I could hit that at least 10 book minimum to make everything be just $1. And I did. So the next thing I found was some more John Romita Jr. These issues come from the Marvel Knights era of comics, titled Wolverine, is part of a story called Enemy of the State that Romita did the pencils on. And I found 2, 3, 4, like six issues from that series. So he must have done, Romita did more than one story, because Enemy of the State is only a 6-part series. And I still need a couple issues to complete the run. But they're all kind of in the 20s. And honestly, I don't remember which volume of Wolverine this is. Got some Greg Land covers in here, right there. Another one. But again, John Romita Jr. doing the interiors. And this is a Joe Quesada cover. And then issue 30. I think I need one more to complete this John Romita Jr. run from Wolverine, but that was really great progress. And we're going to stick with Wolverine, but we're going to go back to volume 2. This was the volume that got me into Wolverine back in the, I guess it was the 80s, with that, his first ongoing title, and I jumped on right with issue number 1. Loved getting at issue number 1 back then. Well, still do, if I'm honest, but got that, and I had a bunch of those. And up to this point, or at this point, I should say, I have the first 100 issues, and like it's happened so many times, I say I only want to get a certain number of issues, and then over time I start to go, maybe I want to stretch that up a little bit further, and because of this sale, I decided, why not? Let's do that now. So have up to issue 100. Now we're going to go, I continued with issue 101. We've got at least covers by Adam Kubert this time. I don't know if he's doing the interior pencils, but such a nostalgic era of comics for me, because this was the early, like, real heyday when I was collecting. And at this point with Wolverine, I say that was August '96. That was really when I dropped off collecting for several years. And a couple of these issues you can see from the markings here, they are also those Onslaught tie-ins. I don't know how far I'm going to go with Wolverine, but now I'm up to this point. I'm sure I'll continue to chip away if the price is right, but I'm in no hurry to get those additional issues. And then I did find some more issues from the classic X-Men that I showed you earlier at issue 9, 11, and 12. So again, always happy when I can make progress on this title. This is one, I see it often enough, but a lot of times they've definitely been well read and well loved, the copies that I find. So really like it when I can find nice condition copies also at a good price. And then just 2 more books to show you. This one comes from a volume I am working on completing. I'm not done yet, but this is Uncanny X-Force issue number 21, volume 1 of that title. Another one where I started collecting just one particular story, but then it kind of grew from that, and now I'm at the point where I just want to complete the volume. And then the last book I'm going to show you was a book that I didn't know existed and just kind of happened across it. And it's the kind of book that I like to pick up for my collection. Not part of a run, not part of a regular ongoing series. But let me pull these out of here first, and then I'll show you. It is this book called X-Men Legends Poster Book. And I've told you in previous videos, I like these kind of offbeat kind of things where it's not really part of an ongoing series. It might be a calendar, it might be a promo book, it might be a yearbook. I think I showed you recently where I found an X-Men yearbook, but this one is called a poster book, and it was done in 2003. And the interesting thing about it is there's really no information, like any kind of publishing information or art credits or anything. I do see a couple that are clearly done by Joe Madureira, one done by Jim Lee, but a lot of these are not even signed. So and even this image on the front is it's kind of a collage. Each of those character images exist as separate poster pages within this book. And now you gotta, I guess I'll clarify, the word poster is really kind of being used loosely here. It's kind of like a full page pinup. So you've got, for example, you've got Wolverine there, and there's several that they did with this treatment, so I don't know what the significance of that is. Maybe that's the X-Men Legends kind of treatment for those. But then, like, there's a Jim Lee Wolverine, and then that's the Wolverine that's from the cover. Let's lay this down. Let's just modify this a little bit here. There we go. There's Wolverine there from the cover image. And then you've got another Wolverine and Beast. More Beast. Oh, I'll show you those like that. But these kind of books are really cool. You know, I can't imagine they printed these with the same quantities as they would of the ongoing issues. So they just seem like the kind of thing that not everybody goes for them. So that's kind of why I like to grab them too. They're different. There's that cover image blown up though as a 2-page spread. And you get the idea. It goes through. You got Rogue and Gambit side by side there. And then any other good ones to show? I'll show this. This is cool. These 2 Magneto images. Again, this one here is from the front cover as well, and that's a Joe Madureira. I don't know who the artist is on the back here. It's probably somebody famous, but they didn't sign it. But that's a cool Magneto image there as well. But yeah, that was the last book I found from the comic book college table. Again, only $1 because it's just a cool X-Men poster book. All right, that's gonna do it for me, and that's gonna wrap up my haul from Microcon 3. I do hope you saw something that you liked, but what about you? Are you collecting any of these runs or series or following any of these characters? And even if you're not, how are things going for you in your own comic adventures of late? Are you getting out to any shows, or are there sales at your local shops? Or maybe now that it's summertime, you're getting out and hitting some garage sales or flea markets. If you're finding anything good, let us know down below. Now, if you're not quite ready for the YouTube fun to stop, I have hand-selected a couple videos here for you to check out. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. You ready, Sherman? So the show that I'm going to tell you about today is called Microcon. It's a series of local comic book shows that really flowed or evolved out of what used to be FallCon and SpringCon here in the Twin Cities. And for those who may be interested, this is Sherman. He's the most recent puppy addition to our family. And apparently he likes the camera and wants to be over here by me. Hello, yes, I love you too. I love you too. We're going to talk about comic books though. Microcon evolved out of FallCon and SpringCon. And then